you look at the loan delinquency rate in commercial real estate, it's ticking up to highs not seen since, the mid 2000s. But if you look at single family delinquency rate, the difference is that single family, you can have 30 years at a low interest rate. And if all of a sudden interest rates go up, you don't have to do, you can just sit there and you can just keep making your monthly payments. You don't have to move. You don't have to do anything.
Welcome to Drunk Real Estate. Grab a drink and enjoy the show.
Hey there, welcome to episode 101 of Drunk Real Estate. I am Kyle Wilson, Ashley Wilson's husband, and we clambered together, the whole crew here. AJ and I are off location, but Jay and Mauricio, you guys are going to hold down the fort for us, right?
That's right. You must be in Canada because it looks gloomy and dreary out there.
Actually, I'm not. I am on vacation with my family in Ocean City, New Jersey, on the boardwalk. And there is a little bit of rain coming through. I don't know if you can see, but I'm still out on the deck right next to the ocean, having a good time.
We know you're lying because Ashley never takes a vacation. So you must be there by yourself.
That's true. She's been working her ass off the whole time. She's been sitting over in the beach during the day with the computer working while I pull my kids around on their boogie board. So it's I have a vacation. I guess she doesn't.
Somebody's got to make money in that family.
Yeah, exactly. Jay, how's it going over there anyway?
Everything's good. Apologies to all our fans for the little confusion on the 100th episode. Like we had some scheduling issues. The audio went out a week before the video. But anyway, thanks for everybody that's stuck with us for 100 episodes here. Appreciate the support. And
does that put us in the top? What percentage of podcasts make it to 100 episodes? It's not that many. You'd be surprised.
It's 6.3.
So he's like, I don't know, maybe somewhere around 6.37.
83.2% of statistics are made up. So
yeah, just because you made that shit up for sure. Are you drinking, Jay?
I am drinking. Actually, my wife and I. This should be a fun episode. Where you can see we're a half bottle into a bottle of Prosecco. So I am drinking.
Just you, or is that you and your wife are halfway in a bottle in?
Yes, I poured her a big glass and then I took the bottle in here.
So you've had one glass, basically, is what you're saying.
I've had about a glass and a half.
Is that cheap La Marca stuff that you have right now, the blue bottle?
No, it's Lestrado. It's Lestrado. It's from. It is from. What country is this from? I don't speak any languages besides English, so I don't even know. Italy.
Yeah. If it's a Prosecco, Jay.
Yeah, it's probably Italian. Yes.
Mauricio, how's it going, man? Dude, I'm actually keeping up the slack since Jay's drinking that garbage. I'm drinking a little Stag's Leap, little Caria, which is very tasty, actually. It was on sale, but not at Costco.
AJ, how's it going, man?
Going good. I'm chilling here. Got my Diet Coke and up here in Coeur d'Alene.
Are you safe in Coeur d'Alene?
We're good. Everybody's good. That all that tragedy and fears gone now. Super sad.
So you were there when it happened? So
I was here the night of. So pretty chaotic, pretty sad. But yeah, everyone's good. Everyone's safe. Unfortunately, there were, I think, 2 people lost their lives, but the community is just really rallied around the fire department and everything else. So we're all good.
Yeah, good to hear. Such a sad story.
Kyle, where are you?
I already said I'm in Ocean City, New Jersey, but
Jay's, by the way, Jay's not listening at all to anything that's gone on for the last 20
I couldn't
minutes.
remember if that was before the show started, after the show started. I'm buzzed. I'm like,
Jay's
again,
drunk already. He has no idea what's going on.
So actually, me being on vacation, I have quite a few options for drinking. My whole little Airbnb here has, I drink every day. So I'm going to go with a little Calumet to start. This is actually the 10-year. So it's a good one, 100 proof. And then if I run out of that, I got just a couple of Coors Lights as backup. So I'm going to be, I got to keep it going, like I can't come down from the buzz.
You never detox. You just retox.
Exactly. You can't get hungover if you never.
Yeah.
If you just stay
drunk.
That's
the secret to life. That's the secret to life.
If you study drunk, you got to take the test drunk.
So I want to start the podcast, but I am a little disappointed, guys. I even wore the shirt and I thought at least one of you would wish me Happy Canada Day, because today is July 1st, and none of you wished me Happy Canada Day. You moved down my list of favorite
Wait,
friends.
why would we wish you Happy
Yeah, why
Canada
would
Day?
we
Something
even
going
know?
on in
We
Canada?
barely know Canada exists, let alone know whatever is Canada Day. It's Independence Day, or what is? I don't even know what Canada Day is, let alone know what day
Well,
it is.
obviously, it's not Independence Day because we have a different backstory for our independence. We're a British.
I thought you liberated from the Yankees back in 1937.
We should just only celebrate the War of 1812 when Canada is the last country to ever beat America in a war. But no, it is Canada Day. So anybody who's out there listening, especially my parents, I know my parents always listen. Happy Canada Day, even though when this comes out, it'll be after Canada Day.
Happy
But
Canada Day
yeah,
to Kyle's parents. I
Yes,
will. I
happy
will wish
yeah,
them. I
100%.
will wish them a
Kyle's
happy
parents.
Canada Day.
I wish Kyle's parents a very
And
happy
to all
Canada
of our
Day,
Canadian listeners, because I know we have a bunch.
except for
So,
Kyle.
yes.
Except for Kyle.
Okay. Well, that's fair. I do have dual citizenship, so I'm only half Canadian now. But
Yeah, I don't remember. First of all, I don't remember a happy Chilean Independence Day twice during the podcast.
That wasn't a happy event. That's a very solemn event.
Independence Day for Chile?
I have no
Sure, it's a
idea.
great
I'm
day.
just making that up.
Chile has an
We had
Independence
to
Day.
liberate ourselves from the conquistadors in Spain, dude. This is important stuff.
Okay. Well, next time you can give a for not wishing you
all
happy
right. So,
Chilean
outside
Independence
that,
Day.
let's get to the only thing that really matters, and that is in 2 days, it's the 4th. So, happy frickin' America Day, because at the end of the day, that's the only one that really, really
I
matters
thought
here.
you were about
So,
to. I thought you were going to bust out some Idaho independent Boise something or other day.
no, I could, but no. Let's stick with Papa United States for right now. The independent states, we can worry about them later.
Next Monday we have my Independence Day. I broke free from my mother's womb and became independent.
Is that a hint? Is that a hint? If everybody could please refrain, if everybody who's listening to the show refrain from wishing Jay a happy birthday on Monday, ignore him completely, that would be awesome.
Just like my family. Okay,
And
let's
Carol,
get started.
and Carol.
Let's
All right,
get started.
So to recap, it's Happy Canada, Happy USA, Happy Chilean Independence, and Happy Birthday, Jay. Right? We're good.
just happy U.S. independence. That's
Happy
it.
life.
That's it.
Happy to be alive this time. All right, let's get right into this. As Jay said, it's been 2 weeks since we've actually done a taping. So what do we got to do? We got to catch up on our economic updates, and that's Jay's specialty. And we got a few. We got some inflation, we got some jobs, we got some stuff like that. But more importantly, we also have Powell gave a little speech, and Powell did not lower interest rates, which now people are increasingly getting upset about. So, Jay, why don't you start off with some stats, and maybe we'll talk about Powell a little bit. Oh, it's up to you. It's your segment.
No, that seems fair. Let me give a quick intro on what's going on. Just catch everybody up on some of the data we've seen, and then we can jump into the battle of the bulge. So let's see. Since last economic update, we got some inflation data. And last week we saw PCE inflation, which is the preferred inflation gauge for the Fed. That's the one they kind of look at to decide are they going to lower interest rates, raise interest rates, et cetera, et cetera. If you read the headlines, you'd probably think that inflation ticked up since last year. And I guess technically since last year it did tick up, but don't listen to the headlines as normal, because the headlines, not purposely, I don't think, but I don't think it's a good indication of what's really happening with inflation. So we did see a tick up from like 2.3 to 2.4% or something since last year, but that's the annual number. Annual number doesn't matter. Nobody cares what inflation was doing a year ago or even 6 months ago. The important number is the monthly number. And so we got the May number last week because it was the last week in June. And what we saw was for non-core, it was up 0.1%, which is annualized is about 1.2% inflation, which is nothing. And even the core number was 0.2%, somewhere around 2.3, 2.4% annualized, which is right where we want to be. So, so if you read the headlines on inflation last week, you probably think inflation's ticking up, but don't believe the hype. Inflation has basically been flat for the last 6-8 months, and that doesn't seem to be moving as of now.
And two, it's very concentrated at all where it's moving up. It's concentrated in a very small number of things. And so, two, the inflation overall, if you look it out, I mean, what's actually even rising is very, very small. And
We still have
so
housing. We still have housing as representing a good bit of
it's,
inflation, which
yeah, you take that out and all of a sudden it's nothing.
And I think you also need to look at the trend, right? Like I always feel like I know we want to look at month over month, but that can be so misleading sometimes because first of all, let's be honest, how accurate are these month to month numbers anyway? There's a lot of swing, but if you look at the trend, even from the beginning of this year, right? So we're already can you believe we're already halfway through? It's been coming down, right? I mean, we started at 3, 2, and 2.8, 2.4, 2.3. So I mean, it's coming down. The trend is down. I think that's the more important thing to look at is the trailing 6 month or 3 or 6 month trailing trend is what I would look at.
Well, we all love to read into what Powell says too. Like everyone lives and dies by every word that he says. And the last thing, he actually used the word contained. If inflation pressures remain contained. So if you take, remain contained, that believes he thinks they're contained at the moment.
Then why I wish he would just man up and say, look, I said originally it was transitory. It was transitory. We're back to where it was before. We're good.
And we'll talk about this in a few minutes because there is other things that play into this. But for right now, let's just. I think we all agree inflation's under control, not an issue, not something that if all other things were equal, we would worry about. So we'll come back to inflation because that's a big part of the whole Trump versus Powell argument that we're going to dive into in a few minutes. But real quick, unemployment, we got unemployment numbers. We get weekly unemployment numbers. We get monthly unemployment numbers. This is kind of the opposite of inflation where the headlines are kind of saying everything is steady, which things are pretty much steady, but there are some subtle trends to the negative. We're seeing people out of work longer. We're seeing more people leave the job force. We're seeing fewer job openings than we were a year ago. So there are some subtle negative trends, nothing alarming. I mean, keep in mind that we've had historically low unemployment for the last couple years, even at 4.1, 4.2%, whatever it's at today. I mean, that's a great number. So even a little bit of softening isn't something we should worry about. Basically, we're reverting to the mean. So is it going to be a trend and we're going to go past the mean and things are going to get worse and we're going to see higher unemployment and we're going to see issues? Who knows? Maybe, maybe not. I think there's a lot of things that indicate that the employment situation isn't that bad. So yeah, a little bit of negative trend, but nothing that I would say is worth even highlighting. So when it comes to both inflation and employment, and this is going to be important in a few minutes, inflation and employment are both really steady, kind of in a good place right now.
With an asterisk on the jobs, of course.
Yeah, but historically speaking, we're still far below a norm in jobs. So it's easy to look at it on like a month to month or Zoom. But if you look at it, we're not steady. We're not going. We are above full employment. We are like the Fed is literally wanting jobs to be lost. They want unemployment to rise because we are.
We don't have to rehash the jobs thing though, because like I still, first of all, I don't believe the numbers. I don't believe it's real statistics, and then B, I also I don't think that we are, if we want to use it to historically jobs, I still don't believe that this is the same type of job market and we're getting the same types of jobs that we used to get. There's a much different job landscape for people able to get jobs right now. So I mean, it's something we obviously have to monitor as far as if there's going to be issues. What was that? The Psalm rule? Is that, Jay? Correct me. What is basically as a good indicator still. But as far as using it versus historically, well, let's compare jobs to what they were in the 90s, early 2000s. I still think it's a very different job market outlook than it was then.
We'll come back to jobs because that's going to be important in a minute. There's one big thing that we've seen data on recently that, if anything, I would say is kind of a yellow or even close to a red flag. it's consumer spending. And we've seen two big headlines around consumer spending from the last week. First, we saw a third revision, which is a final revision to the Q1 GDP number. Basically, what they do is they keep collecting data after they put that number out, and they do a first revision, then a month later, a second revision, and then a month later, they do a third revision. And so in the third revision, basically, GDP was revised down from negative 0.2 to negative 0.5%. So minor correction there. But the big thing,
minor correction, but everyone thought that it was going to go the other way, right? Like they believed that the correction was going to take it into the positive.
well, interestingly, if you look here, the big reason they thought it was going to go the other way was because of imports. They thought that there was a big set of imports that hadn't been factored into basically imports. Everything in this imports category is negative on GDP. And again, if you're watching, I have a graph up, and so if you're watching, you're when I'm talking about is this graph. But basically, imports are negative, business spending and investment is positive, and generally everything that starts out in imports ends up in business inventory. You import something, it's negative when you import it, but as soon as you put it on the shelves or on in your warehouse or you sell it, it goes into investment, which cancels out the import. And so what we saw was, things got a little bit better by lowering that import number, but things were negatively impacted in the biggest sense by this consumer spending number. So we were at 1.2% consumer spending growth in Q1 based on the first estimate. By the third estimate, we were down to 0.5% consumer spending growth. And so consumer spending was literally about 40% of what they thought it was. And that 0.5% number, it's one quarter. It was a quarter where things were crazy with tariffs. We had a new administration in, a lot of weird stuff going on. So I wouldn't read too much into it, but it is an indication that we need to keep an eye on consumer spending and things might be trailing off. And then last week we got the PCE number, and PCE is not just inflation, but PCE actually stands for personal consumption, which is a spending number. And what we learned last week was that, again, for May, so we're a month behind, the PCE number comes in literally the last day of the month normally for the month before, the month after. And so this was May numbers. In May, we saw consumer spending actually drop for the first time this year, 0.1%. And so there is reason to believe consumer spending is slowing down. We also saw personal savings, personal income drop by 0.4% month over month, which is a really big drop. A lot of that is probably attributable to the fact that the government is slowing down social services and those types of payments. So people are making less money from social service payments. But long story short, the one thing that I would keep an eye on and the one thing that we should look at moving forward that could have a big impact on the economy, because it is one of the biggest drivers of the economy. It's 70% of GDP, and that's consumer spending. And so we are seeing that slow down, and so we should be watching that over the next couple months.
So basically, like we have the consumer spending that's even down is down very little. Jobs are still above historical trends. If you take inflation, housing out, everything else pretty much is down. And if you took housing out, inflation would be very much under even its targeted rate. And salaries are up. You have the negative GDP numbers, which was, driven by front loading. If you take that out, it's not negative at all. So that could be revised on the annual. But at the end of the day, if you look at it, what the Fed is trying to target and everything else, you're going, we don't have a dire picture. Nothing's collapsing. Inflation isn't spiking. In fact, we're not seeing job loss numbers that would indicate even remotely anything.
Literally, the only reason that they haven't hit their targets is they made an arbitrary 2% target, right? That they just literally made that number up. It wasn't based off of any facts or any science or anything. They just said our target's 2%, and that's the only thing that they technically haven't done.
And outside housing, they're there.
Let's be clear. The consumer spending number is down a lot. It's not particularly encouraging or optimistic. But again, we've had a lot of craziness over the last 6 months, and it may be just the result of consumers reacting to the craziness that we've seen with tariffs and with imports and with other stuff. It may
Or
not be
credit card balances are all time high, and they're just running out of space on their credit cards.
Yeah, that's possible too, and that's a bad omen for the economy.
Consumer spending is huge. I think that, and two, I mean, it was down, but like not a crazy amount. It's not like this was like a huge sharp drop or anything else.
One other thing I think we should touch on too, though, is before I believe this was going to be a big hit, and I think it just might be delayed, is the whole student loans. Like the student loans were turned back on, and like in the lead up into the student loans being turned back on, people had to start paying their student loans back. There was a whole, like, everyone was talking about, oh, like, how's this going to affect the economy? How's this going to affect the economy? And then it kind of just didn't, right? Like nothing really happened in the last year. But then I think it might just be a delayed reaction, and more so like with housing, right? Like you kind of have to make your payment go delinquent, and then you have to go through the process and stuff. And I just read an article that 2 million student loan borrowers are currently at risk of having their wages garnished now. So it's to the point where they're so delinquent that they're going to start garnishing wages, and roughly 6 million borrowers are over 90 days past or due or like delinquent on paying these things. So it seems like maybe this is actually going to be something that's just a delayed reaction of people being able to pay these things and showing, okay, like maybe it's another indicator of consumer spending. Like all these people who have these student debts are now having their expenses go up along with inflation, along with these other things, that they're going to be spending a lot less money now.
Well, let's pivot this discussion a little bit from what is the data telling us is going on in the economy to what should we be doing about it, because I think that's the thing that there's been a lot of discussion about over the last couple of weeks. If you've been paying attention to politics, and I probably do more than I should, you've heard.
Agreed.
Yeah, you've heard Jerome Powell basically come out and say, "Hey, we're not doing anything with rates as of now. We're going to keep an eye on things." And Trump come out and say, "Powell's destroying the economy and is doing a horrible job, and we should be lowering rates." The last thing he said was by 2 points, literally, which is a huge drop. Which we all know.
Are you referring to the note that he made? Did you guys see that note?
Yes.
Where it was a list of all the countries and what their interest rates were. And he took a Sharpie and wrote on it a whole note to Powell, and then handed it to the press secretary and told her to read that note to him. And then they released the thing. It was the weirdest thing.
Yeah. So anyway, I mean, we all know Trump's negotiating strategy. He says 2 points if he wants a half-point cut. But he's calling for cuts. He's beating up Powell pretty bad. Powell's holding his ground. So it's a good discussion point of, so is Powell doing the right thing, the wrong thing? Let's talk a little bit about what he's doing and why. So remember, Powell's the Fed chief, and his job as the Fed chair is two things. One, and we just talked about these, is to manage inflation, make sure that prices aren't going up too fast. And two, to manage employment, make sure that unemployment isn't going up too fast. And if he can do both of those things, if inflation is good somewhere around 2%, if unemployment is where let's refer to it as full employment, meaning most people who are looking for jobs have jobs, then the Fed's doing their job. And his goal is to not just do that for today, but also to kind of forecast in the future where things are headed and make sure that we stay at low inflation, full employment. And that's where we are today. We have inflation somewhere in the low 2s. We have unemployment in the low 4s. Everything is good. Trump is basically saying that we need to cut rates. He's not saying specifically why. One of the reasons, I mean, he's not ignoring the why. He said a couple times that we need to lower rates to get our interest payments, our national debt payments down, or to make sure they don't go too high. But he's kind of stayed away from the why should we be lowering interest rates 2 points or however much. And in reality, there's the reason you lower interest rates is because one of two things. Either you're worried about the economy softening and you need to spur it on, or you think interest rates are way too high and inflation is likely to crash. We could run into severe disinflation or deflation, and you want to avoid that. And so those are kind of the two big reasons.
Can I take a softer version of that though? Because Powell himself has said in his speeches and in the Q&A that we are currently restricted. We could argue whether or not we actually are restricted, but by his opinion, they are saying that they're currently restrictive, moderately restrictive. Restrictive, I think is the wording that he said. So if he thinks the economy is where it should be and they've achieved it, we shouldn't be restrictive. We should be at neutral rates. And we can argue where the neutral rates are, but we should be, if it's mission accomplished, as you just said, everything's where it should be, we should be at neutral rates. We shouldn't be restrictive and we shouldn't be accommodating.
Exactly. If there were no other external forces or considerations, and Trump actually, or not Trump, Powell came out and said that today. Powell came out today and said if there was not this external force, specifically he was talking about tariffs. He said if tariffs weren't,
which he does a great job, by the way, of not just flat out calling out tariffs. Like, he doesn't want to give a soundbite. He will just be like, oh, external factors and uncertainty in the market right now, including tariffs, but he doesn't want to say tariffs.
But he did. Today he said, he came out today and he literally said, if it weren't for tariffs, we would have lowered interest rates again. But his concern is that tariffs are potentially inflationary. We haven't seen that yet, but he also said that, and there's reason to believe that basically we front loaded a lot of the tariff issues, and we bought a ton of stuff from China and Japan and other countries. We loaded our shelves and we haven't basically run out of all that inventory that we bought in Q1 yet. And so we're not starting to see the price increases from the tariffs that were implemented a couple months ago. But as Powell said, that could come in July. It could come in August. It could come in September. And we don't know if it's going to come or not, but common sense says it probably will, or it should, assuming there's not some other negative influence on the economy. And
but how much though?
And well, two, we've had 3 studies now done. 3 studies, one by the Federal Reserve in 2025, the Atlanta Fed, and the New York Fed survey that all came out to show that the companies did not pass on nearly as much. They passed on limited impacts on tariffs. That tariffs were not being a straight line pass on. They weren't being driven because they were looking at why aren't we seeing them come up? And this is why you've had a lot of people that are saying the impact's just not. We don't think it's going to be nearly as much as we thought it was. And this is their studies. They say yes, tariffs do raise consumer prices, but the impact has been modest at most, and they go, it's not being passed on. And there's a whole lot of reasons for that in all these studies, but this idea that it was just going to come in and shock and the whole economy and everything, it hasn't happened, and that's not due to it's even timing. Literally, the companies haven't been passing those fully on.
Yeah, but common sense says that while companies might eat some of that cost early on, I mean, look at Walmart. Walmart has margins of 1.4% on average year over year, and they're facing tariffs of somewhere like 25% on 40% of their goods, and then smaller tariffs 30% on 40% of their goods, and then smaller tariffs on 10% tariffs on another 30% of their goods. Basically, they can't, if they absorb more than 2 or 3% of this price increase, they're going to lose money. How long is Walmart going to be willing to lose money versus?
They're not. They're making tons of money. And so what we're looking at is they're absorbing it. And so what the Fed showed in their studies was that the desire to take on market share and be competitive was more. So what the companies are actually doing is when everybody's afraid of raising prices, they're not, so they can take on more shares and be more competitive.
But that means they have to lose money long term. Walmart's not going to lose money. They might be willing to lose money.
They're not losing it short term. They're quarterly results.
No, you have to.
Are they lying?
No, we haven't seen their quarterly results from Q2.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's pretty. It's pretty.
If their
early on,
margins
though.
are 1.4% and their prices are going up 30 and 40%, how is it feasible from a mathematical standpoint that they're not losing money? The math doesn't math. They have to be losing money when you have 1.4% margins.
How? Walmart doesn't make the products.
What do you mean, how?
Walmart doesn't make the products. You're talking about the cost of manufacturing and selling it. Walmart
No, I'm talking about the
distributes
cost
and
of
has it on
buying the products
shelves,
that they're selling.
but they can set the prices. When you go in to negotiate with Walmart and Walmart says we're going to pay $20, your losses are your problem. They're not the ones that are building the products or making it.
What seems that could be happening is some of these manufacturers are eating it a little bit in hopes that things will change, right? Because things are very fluid. From one tweet to the next, we're either tariffing all of Canada, or we're not, or the China tariff is 147% or it's 10%, or so I feel like there's a lot of these larger manufacturers are probably just keeping to their contracts and eating it a little bit in hopes that, 1 week to the next things are going to change. So someone like Walmart, they have contracts with manufacturers, and they will be still shipping in things from those contracts. And the manufacturers are probably eating it overseas at the moment
Yeah, but
because
somebody's eating it. It's to either point. Like, even if AJ, your point is like Walmart, Costco, all these big, retail boxes, they have purchasing power, so they can just be like, dude, we're not paying more than this. It is what it is. But somebody's eating that cost, whether it's the wholesaler that's bringing it in. There's only so long that those wholesalers can eat it before they're like, dude, sorry, Walmart, I know you're my biggest customer and my life depends on you, but I can't continue doing this because my kids' college.
But it makes sense that at this point they're the ones that are
Wholesale
eating.
margins are only 50%. And so they're not eating the 30, 40% cost over there either. So at some point, this is going to, one of two things has to happen.
Jay, how do you know that they're not eating that right now?
Well, they might be eating it right now. They're not going to eat it long term, is my point. Maybe Walmart's eating the cost. Maybe they're going to report negative Q2.
I do have a lot of people I know that do sell to not to Walmart or Target, but like to Costco, right? And so they're struggling. So if Costco comes to you and say, look, I've been paying you $100 for this thing. I'm going to continue to pay. Maybe I'll give you $102. They're the ones eating it, and they can maybe sustain that for in the short term so they can continue the relationship with the big bucks. But at some point, they're going to be like, dude, as much as I like this relationship or really depend on this relationship with Costco, I can't continue doing it if you're going to charge.
No one wants to lose their contract, and everyone's seeing that these things literally change daily, weekly, and it seems to me that these larger manufacturers, the suppliers to the big box chains, the suppliers to these American companies, are probably the ones who are eating it in the short term in hopes that in the long term something's going to work out and it's all going to be back to a more of a status quo and get figured out.
But two, once again, when you talk about tariffs, we're saying, 30% increase. That's not the increase, though, on all products, goods, and services. So what we've seen is manufacturers or distributors, particularly, they're moving where they're manufactured for. So some places tariffs are different than others. We're taking the highest, largest tariff and putting that across the board. That's not at all how it works. Not even remotely close. Not all products, goods, and services are hit with the one highest tariff that's coming in. So it's not affected like everything goes up 30% and everybody's just going to go bankrupt.
But it's also not. It's also not as simple as that. I mean, a lot of U.S. companies are building their products or their food or whatever they're doing, and they're grabbing different either ingredients or different parts from different countries, and that's increasing their overall, not 30%, but it's increasing their overall input costs, and that input cost is hurting their margins. And if they then have to sell it to Walmart, and Walmart's like, we're just going to pay you the same thing we've been paying you for the last 10 years, that margin is getting squeezed, and it can only get squeezed for a certain amount of time before the guys are like,
it's already up due to tariffs. We have a 3% from all goods, basically on average, across Amazon. New autos is 4 to 8%. We have a 3% across, not autos, but the overall consumption prices is around 0.23, which was very different if you look at 2018. Let's go back pre the massive inflation, which was 0.5. That's a huge increase, right? It's not that that's not a big increase. So we have seen prices go up, right? It's not that that's not happening, but if they're going up and they can take on a burden of that cost and partly pass on the rest to the consumers, mitigate it as they're trying to shift their distribution, as they're moving it, it's not that we won't have cost increases. Of course we will. And they've already happened. We've already seen the cost because tariffs, you're right. Somebody has to pass it on, but it's not nearly to the effect that we thought or
A lot of people still believe, though, it's yet to be seen. Like there's, as you said, there's some people are eating the cost, and that could be foreign powers that are eating the cost at the moment.
We talked
we've already
about
seen it.
But no, we talked about how massive the amount of imports we saw in February, March, April were. Businesses are still going through that inventory. They're finishing up that inventory off their shelves. So we're just starting to see this new tariffed inventory on the shelves. The stuff that they bought back then wasn't tariffed. They loaded up before tariffs. And so they didn't have to raise prices on that stuff and they could still hit their margins. Can't do that.
If you have a contract with Walmart too, that's worth a lot. Like it's literally your bread and butter. You're going to hold to that contract as long as you can until you can't anymore.
Certainly, but keep in mind there are tens of millions of small businesses in this country that don't have the negotiating and the pricing power of Walmart. If they're buying from China, they're not going to call up their supplier and say, "Hey, you need to eat this 30% cost." They're not going to do that. They're either going to go out of business or they're going to raise their prices by 30%. And all the anecdotal
If they're
evidence
manufacturing with China, because we're once again we're using this one tariff and applying it to all goods and services. But what happens is other people will become more competitive because they will have a higher margin because they are manufacturing from Mexico. Their production will increase, like we've seen. China's production is way down. They're having mass layoffs. And then we have everything from Indonesia to Mexico to everywhere else. They're ramping up big time.
Yeah, but they'll still be more expensive than China. Plus, there will still be some tariff on top of it.
But how much more? Like if it's only 2 or 3% more, then it's not a big deal.
So if they're going to be cheaper than China, then we would have moved manufacturing to them already. The fact that we manufacture, there's a reason we manufacture in China.
No, we've been moving off China for the last 10 years as the middle class. China's labor has gotten so much more expensive.
A third of our goods are imported from China. If China wasn't the cheapest, then those goods would be imported from somewhere else.
Yeah, but Jay, it could, we still don't know how much more expensive though. Like it's, free market would dictate that they were the cheapest if that's what they're using. But if it's only 2 or 3% more, as we said, like margins are only 2 or 3% on this. If it's only 2% more to go to, to Mexico or Cambodia or something like that, then like the effect is good. And that's, it'll be like, a minimal effect on the overall cost.
Well, wait a second, but is it? So it because we're talking about these numbers as if like they don't matter, 2 or 3% here, 2 or 3% there. But the reality is, if inflation gets to 3%, people are going to freak out. And we're currently at 2.3, 2.4%. So it doesn't take a big jump in prices. We don't need to see 30% jump in prices before we have major strain on the consumer. I mean,
but we already did see it. 8%'s already gone into effect increase. So the tariffs increases,
but we haven't seen it because we're still selling inventory that was bought pre-tariff.
$6,000 per car on average have gone up because of tariffs.
I mean, okay, here, can I throw something out? Can we maybe just agree that we haven't seen the full effect of tariffs yet? We're still working. I think that like it's generally accepted by most economists at this point that they believe the full effect of tariffs would happen quicker, and it's not. It's that there's things are getting pushed off, and we haven't seen the full effect of them yet, or whether it's going to be, to AJ's point, it could be a lot more muted than we believe, or to Jay's point, if we haven't seen it yet, it could see a whole ripple effect, but that's going to take some time. So I guess that bringing this back to the whole Powell thing, is he right in the sense of, okay, yes, it could be a more muted effect, or it could be a much larger effect, but until we know that, I can't really do anything. I got to kind of just sit here on my hands.
That's 100% what I was trying to say. That's what Powell is saying. We don't know the impact of inflation, but as of today, inflation's okay, employment's okay. I'm achieving my dual mandate of full employment and low inflation. until we have more information about what tariffs are going to do, why should I risk moving in the wrong direction? I might have to raise rates. I might have to lower rates.
Yeah, but the reason you need to do this, and I wanted to bring up a chart that I'm surprised AJ, it's one of AJ's favorite charts. So I'll bring it up in a second. But one of the reasons is because there's a lag to whatever the Fed does. So it doesn't really matter what's going on today. If we're at equilibrium today, it's really what's going on in the next 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. And that's what they're trying to project. And so they're like, everything's cool now, but I don't know what's going to happen with the tariff effect or what's going to happen in the next 6, 12 months. I've got to wait and see. But I think, unless I missed it, we haven't talked about one of AJ's favorite charts.
And that's a really good point, Mauricio, because think about it this way. Because there's a lag, one of two things happens if Powell moves rates today. If he moves rates and he moves in the correct direction, like he moves rates down because he thinks inflation is going to be low, or he moves rates up because he thinks inflation is going to be high. If he moves rates and it turns out that he made the right move because what happens is what he was expecting, then great. We've gotten out ahead of it. And 6 months from now, 12 months from now, things are going to be good. But let's say he moves rates today and the opposite of what he expected happens, then all he is doing is he's overcorrecting more than the market was pricing in, and he's making things even worse. If he lowers rates and we see inflation, now the inflation is going to be worse. Or if he raises rates and we see inflation drop, now the economy is going to get worse.
And one of the things that kind of predict that, AJ, this is one of your favorite charts, right? Like this is the M2 money supply. Right. And we saw that it peaked, at the end of it peaked at about 2022, 2023, somewhere in there. And then it started to come back down. And we were talking a lot about the fact that the liquidity was dropping, money was coming out of the system, which is what the Fed wants in order to get pricing down. But as you can see from the last, from the end of 2023, from the end of 2023 to beginning of 2024, that M2 money supply, and I'm not saying the M2 is the end all be all, it's just AJ's favorite chart. It's been going up, right? And so as it's going up, that's a precursor to, hey, there's more liquidity out there in the system right now, which usually that is by definition, actually, under my definition is it is the inflation of the money supply. So inflation is happening. It's going up, which is going to lead to higher prices. So if that's something the Fed's looking at.
Tariffs are so small in this. We have $3 trillion sitting on the sidelines. Sitting. Commercial real estate has 400 billion sitting in bank accounts that are allocated to be deployed. This is the problem. It is not, when you look at this, it's not tariffs. It's if you lower interest rates, $3 trillion is going to go to work. Do you know what that'll do to inflation? The inflation is caused by money supply. That's it. It's all about the money. If you have high money supply and you're talking about tariffs and everything else, high interest rates, more than the cost, it locks capital up. It's not even that you can get it, it locks it up.
Do you think the Fed and Powell, do you think they are tapped into that though? Or do you think that's kind of just off their radar?
Oh, absolutely think so. They talked about this even last year when they were literally like, we're in a fight here. Why? Because we're trying to lower the money supply, but we can't. Why? Because the government is borrowing literally more than we are cutting out and putting it into the economy. That hasn't changed. That hasn't changed.
Almost every single time he does a speech these days, he does mention about the tightening that they continue to do. So like
spending bill is what's doing it. The new spending bill that we have is the thing that is going to stop them from lowering interest rates because it directly correlates with the money supply. If they shrunk it, then if they do it.
Other than the fact that Powell, as to Jay's point, he's not even hiding it now. He's coming right out and saying, hey, if it weren't for tariffs, I would have lowered now, or I would be lowering.
But but the spending bill, the amount of money we're spending in this new bill, if it passes.
Spending and creating.
Exactly. So it like not all, and this is the thing, not all spending of the government affects the M2 money supply. You get $1 from taxpayers, you spend it, that doesn't affect the money supply. The problem is the money that is borrowed and created from the central banks to give to them to put into the economy. That inflates the money supply. That's the actual problem. So the dollars that increase the money supply, which they did not change. If the spending bill hadn't drawn out that, it just wouldn't have had an effect. But yes, he says tariffs, but also he's never talked about that. He's never come out and said that directly. Why do you think Powell wouldn't come out and say, the government's the actual reason that we have that we have inflation? And if they do this, we're not, because they don't go to war. He's not going to go to war with the government like that. He didn't with the last administration. He's not going to with this administration. But I mean,
I don't know. His give meter's a little lower though too.
It is because he's leaving soon. So
yeah, he's leaving soon, and like I saw him, he was in one of these other countries on a panel, and I just happened to be like watching it today. And he basically, they were asking, and every single time he's like, "Well, I only got 10 months left, and then I'm done." And like he's not even like he's accepted. He's not going. He's not coming back. There's no chance of coming back. Like, but and I did want to ask you, AJ, just to wrap this up because we do got to wrap this up. So, is there a risk though? So let's say Powell did raise or lower at one point, or let's say he did go in the wrong way. Do you believe with all these other risks, with the spending bill and with the M2 money supply, there's a risk of like runaway inflation, or are we talking about just like higher inflation, like 4 or 5% inflation?
at the end of the day, he does not want to be Volcker. He doesn't want to be the guy that when he leaves, the threat to him of inflation occurring after what he's done is so much greater than the ability to leave interest rates high. So the Fed, the risk of inflation spiking due to them lowering rates is way higher because the economy is doing fine. So they go look at it and they go, the economy doesn't need us to bail them out. Why would we even risk inflation and have a Paul Volcker situation? And I like, why? Why do it? It's makes no sense to the Fed.
Well, would that be worse than a recession? Because like that's the other side, right? That if a recession happens, of course, Trump's going to blame it on him, right?
But that's the overarching question. Just kind of the question I always have is, okay, I know you guys are, multifamily, self-storage. You guys want lower rates, but why would the Fed lower it? Like, what's the reason for it?
They shouldn't.
There's no reason for it now, especially when you're looking at M2 supply. Yeah, M2's going up, money supply, the bill spending, the tariffs, everything points in the next 6 to 12 to 18 months to an increase in activity, which would theoretically bring up inflation, which is what I think what the Fed looking.
Except for the fact there could be a decent chance of 2 consecutive quarters here of negative GDP, which is a technical recession.
Who cares about the technicality of the recession, right?
Let me bring up another point, and nobody talks about this. The only place I've ever heard this talked about is in actually the book I wrote a few years ago.
I was about to say the only time you've really seen it is in my brain or in my mind or in my dreams.
So I don't hear anybody talking about it, and I think it's important. So what happened?
Tell me what it is. I'm sure I can cite it in my book.
What happens when we have a major recession? What's the first thing that the Fed's going to do?
It's on page 76 of my book.
They're going to drop rates, not necessarily to zero, but they're going to drop rates. On average, for major recessions in this country, how far does the Fed drop rates from high point to low point?
3%.
It depends on the severity. On average, yeah, I don't know what the average.
For the bad recession, so 2008, 2001, late 80s or early 80s, it was about average of 5%. So I didn't know this offhand, but I was looking it up earlier.
That's misleading. I'd like to know what the percentage drop is because, if interest rates are at 12 and it drops to 0, that's a big, but what's the percentage drop? But yeah, I'm with you on that. Of course.
But it's about 5%.
Yeah.
So we need that runway. If we were to have a major recession next month or 6 months from now, and interest rates are at 2%, 3%, we can't drop 3, 4, 5% without going negative. And so I was saying this back in 2007.
I would argue though, if we're at 3.5 right now, like you could still drop 3.5, and like interest rates from 3.5 down to 0 are going to be like napalm on a fire.
Maybe it depends on how bad a recession we have. If we have another 2020 event where the world shuts down, we're going to need runway. And so Trump wants us to be at 2 points below where we are. That's somewhere in the 2.25 range.
But you said himself, he doesn't want 2. He's negotiating 2, and he would take 1.
But just to put things into perspective, that 2.5% range, we've been at that range 3 times in modern history. After 9/11, after 2008, and after 2020. And so this is what he's claiming we should have at the same time that we have stock market equity highs, historic highs, and the claim that we have the greatest economy ever. And so it doesn't reconcile when you have equity records, supposedly a great economy, and you're now asking for rates to be where they were after 9/11, after 2008, and after 2020.
It seems like all you guys are on the same page that we should be keeping it, and I guess I'll just take the counterpoint that I don't think we should be down to what he's saying, like down in the sub 2%. But if we, even if Powell believes, like, let's say mid threes is the not restrictive, not accommodative, I don't think it would be bad to be there right now. And if we want to weigh the risks, if I look at the fact that inflation might go up a little bit, and if we're in the 4%, 5% inflation versus, as AJ's brought up, how much debt we have to refinance very soon, and all these other things that, like, keeping high interest rates, the real estate market is kind of just still teetering. Um, the risks of other catastrophic events happening by keeping these rates this high, that I think would just be alleviated with just like a full percentage, and then just keep it there. And if he wants to raise it again after, that's fine. But like, I guess that's my only argument against that.
Kyle, I like the way you framed it, but because we don't know what the actual interest rate should be, but I like that argument. I like to frame the argument as like, should we be accommodating or should we be restrictive? Like that's a good discussion, but we don't know what the actual interest rate should be, right? So we could be like, it should be, just because Powell says it's restrictive, like maybe the actual interest rate should be 6%. Yeah. Right. And so we're under that. Like, we don't know. And that's part of the problem with this whole system, is that the actual true interest rate, which is a supply and demand function, we don't allow that to make itself available, because we've got individuals
and one of the problems you have too is housing. The number one reason housing is so unaffordable is interest rates. So if you're looking at one of the major crises that we have in the United States, which is reflected in inflation, interest rates are driving it. So there is a huge argument to say, listen, now this is a chicken and egg thing. You want to stop the inflation of shelter, which is basically the only thing driving interest rate to be where it's at all, then you need more houses, right? You can't get more houses at interest rates this much. So we are actually making the problem worse. Also, the affordability of housing. If interest rates rising is killed affordability. Affordability in housing, to own, to actually buy, and to put rent, you cannot get at interest rates this low housing to come down. You just can't do it. So the main driver of inflation is that.
That goes to my point too, whereas, like, I'm not saying let's drop this to like zero. Like, if you just bring it down 1 percentage point, the number of people, like, if you look at the statistics, the number of people that can all of a sudden buy homes with just 1 percentage point drop is like, it's millions and millions of people that can all of a sudden afford.
But that's such a biased opinion from somebody who buys real estate. Like, what if you're not in the real estate? Who cares about?
I'm talking single family. I don't give a shit about, honestly.
No, but everybody has to use real estate, Mauricio. You have to rent.
Agreed. But Mauricio, single family housing being unaffordable is awesome for me. If people can't afford homes, they have to rent my apartments. So, like, continuing to have housing unaffordable is great for me, for my current stock. If you can buy things, if you're able to transact right now in multifamily, it's a big if, but if you have stuff, like, it should, as long as housing is unaffordable, the rents should go up, the occupancy should go up, and all these different things, because supply's not coming on either. So that should be a good thing for us. But
that's one. Yeah, and I hear you, but that's only one of 1,000 factors. I mean, the fact that we're unaffordable isn't just because interest rates are high. There's a bazillion other reasons why it's unaffordable, and we could always address those issues instead of just the interest
supply
rate,
and demand. No, there isn't even a billion. Supply and demand. If you increase supply, you would drop prices, but you cannot get developers to build.
I mean, AJ, obviously I'm in California, so I'm a little bit
more.
Oh,
but California is not the United States.
But I think that goes everywhere. I mean, the restrictions, to put it in a nice way, the restrictions that we have to go through in California makes the building of a brand new, the replacement cost of building a brand new piece of property is artificially high because of all of the restrictions and all the rules that somebody has to. Now, yes, it's a lot, overweighted in California, but in all states, there's there's rules and regulations that prohibit you from building the lowest possible cost of construction. And that's one of the and I'm saying the only factor, but that's a factor. Interest rates are definitely a factor. The ability of people to pay is a factor. There's a bunch of different factors. Interest rates is just one. It's a big one. Don't get me wrong. It might be, maybe it's a third or a half. I don't know. But it might, it's the largest, but it's not by any means 90% of it. There's a lot
But
of other factors.
if we're talking about single family, there is a bit of a nuance compared to all these other industries. In that single family, a changing in interest rate, like I just pulled up the Freddie Mac loan delinquency rate, and the thing is, if you look at the loan delinquency rate in commercial real estate, it's it's ticking up to highs not seen since the mid 2000s. If you look at single family delinquency rate, the difference is that single family, you can have 30 years at a low interest rate, and if all of a sudden interest rates go up, you don't have to do shit. You can just sit there and you can just keep making your monthly payments. You don't have to move. You don't have to do anything. So the delinquency rate is still like 0.5%. I saw like 0.55% for the delinquency rate in Freddie Mac. So when interest rates go up, to AJ's point, all it does is it prevents people from building. And so it's not like all of a sudden it creates new supply because people can't afford their homes anymore. It doesn't happen. Like people just stay in their homes, and it actually makes it worse that way. So it's a bit nuanced when we're talking about single family versus there's no push and pull on these sides because people just don't move.
Well, to Kyle's point, 25 basis points, meaning the rate going from 6.5 to 6.75 is 1.13 million households out of the market. The difference of a 3 to 7% increase, right, in interest rates, or let's say, 3 to 7%, is an 80% jump in the cost. 80% jump in the cost. So you could have a house double, and if you have interest rates at 3 or whatnot, it will not affect the payment of the houses similarly. Where all you need is interest rates to go, from that level, it's 80% of the cost, and you don't get anything for that 80%. That's the thing. You get nothing for an 80% increase in your payment. So it is a huge factor both on the supply and the affordability. And right now, inflation is absolutely locked into shelter. That's the problem. And so you may be stopping because if you lower interest rates, obviously houses will become more expensive because more people will buy them. The key here, though, is supply. We saw this after 2008. The reason why housing has gotten so expensive is we underbuilt for a decade to the tune of millions and millions and millions of houses we were short. And so now we're prolonging that. Development shut down. So now we're doing it again. It's getting worse. And so it is a chicken and egg, but
it's a double whammy going on right now, because it's not just interest rates, because there's also the spread, the VIG, as you want to talk about, that banks are adding just because of uncertainty right now, right? All of the uncertainty that's going on, we could take another half a percentage point off of this just if the banks were comfortable with the trajectory of the economy, but they're not. And so that's adding to it as well. So if we had a clear path from the Fed, a clear path from the administration regarding their policies with the economy and tariffs and things like that, then the banks would bring those spreads way down, and you would see the 10-year treasury go way down, and we wouldn't even have to drop it that much to all of a sudden we're seeing a point and a half off of mortgage rates. And to AJ's point, how many millions of people are jumping in on that?
So when you look at when interest rates rose, the housing market prior to when interest rates rose was booming. Affordability was like the highest it's ever been. After interest rates went up, housing prices did not rise like obviously they were in the past. Yet affordability tanked. And you had transactions that just got destroyed, wiped off. Like transactions went down below 2008 numbers. But housing didn't go up, right, to that level. Basically, the entire housing market became unaffordable just in the rise of interest rates. And so this is a major, major issue when it comes to shelter. Now, I'm not saying, once again, housing, the actual cost of housing is different than how much you pay for housing. So if you drop interest rates, the price of the houses will go. You will have buyers, they'll start fighting because both of these problems are really being dictated on limited supply. But when you have limited supply and you have high house cost, high interest rates demolishes the housing market, demolishes it. And that's what we saw. We did not see housing prices skyrocket, and that's why it became unaffordable. It was purely due to interest rates. That's what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
but I don't know. But when you get to a point where you're already at the edge of affordability, like you're already maxed out on your credit. You're only supposed to be spending about a third of your income on buying your home, on the value of your mortgage payment should be no more than 30 to 35% of your debt to income ratio. That's already been stretched to 40 to 45, some places 50%. Any small marginal increase in that cost is going to make major, whether that's interest rates, whether that's just more regulation, whatever the reason is, that's going to be a disproportionate because they're already at their wits' end. There's no more that they can spend because they're already maxing out their credit, their resources. And to my point that I've been talking about for years is that there's only so much money that household can get. There's only two people that are eligible to be working. There isn't a third spouse that can come in and generate more revenue. So you get to a point where you hit that ceiling and I think a lot of it is on the demand side. They just know the elasticity of the demand. You just don't have the purchasing power to make those monthly payments, whether it's that last piece is the interest rate or some other factor. You're already at your edge.
But to AJ's point before too, like the cost to build, it affects a lot more the lower end houses, right? Like once the cost to build gets so much higher and the interest rates are so much higher, the only houses that can get built on the single family side are the higher end houses, right? Because they have higher margins and you could still make those spreads on the $1 million, $2 million houses. But if you're talking about those entry level houses, like the $300,000-$400,000 houses, it's not going to make sense for anyone to build. So any builder is going to be shifting to doing the higher end houses because there's still some demand for that, and people can, they can, even if interest rates are high, someone who could normally afford it, or someone who can normally afford a $2 million house, now they can buy a $1.4 million house, and like, oh geez, I'll rough it for a little bit, and then when interest rates come down, then I'll move back up. But those people coming into the market, the people who should be these Gen Zers who should be moving up from renting and moving into their first starter home, they're just not able to do it right now, and it's like the transaction volume is still way suppressed.
Yeah, but the builders are also are forced to build larger homes because the cost to build is so high that in order for them to get at the starter home level to get more yield from their construction, it's much cheaper to just add another bedroom, for example. Like the cost of adding another bedroom isn't that much versus adding another kitchen and obviously bathrooms, whatever. But an extra room, another 200-300 square feet is minimal, and now you've got it makes more economic sense for that. So that's part of the issue is that you're seeing larger homes. You look at the average home 50, 60 years ago, people were living in 700, 800, 900 square feet. Now the average home is much higher because in order for builders to be able to actually make a profit and a margin, they have to build larger homes, which again makes it more like if you can't afford a home, you'd be happy to have a 1 bedroom or a studio or just something smaller that you can afford. But from builders, it doesn't make sense because the cost of construction is so high for them. They have to add that marginal utility room, which is another 200 square feet. That's cheap to build. And then they can sell it at a higher price.
Yeah. And then interest rates. I mean, but it's still like when you look at it, the cost to build and the cost of money. These are the two things we have. The cost to build, right, has gone up, and it's it's continue, especially in areas like where you are, Mauricio, where it's 3 times what everybody else is, right? And when you look at that, you can see the interest rates exasperate that. It's a form of leverage. That's all. So it exasperates it to a point where it's like, not only it's not doable, it's not even imaginable. Like, people look at that and go, $1 million home at 7% interest. They're like, there's no way. That's not even, like, I can't even imagine that. But then the problem comes is when a builder, you got Jay and Kyle going up there and they're building multifamily, and they're sitting here going, yeah, our monthly payment on these 100 units where we were at 3% versus 7%, how much of a difference is that on your property? Like, as far as monthly cash flow goes, that you need to get from rent on a brand new build. I mean, do you guys just ballpark number on a new build in multifamily, 3% to 7%? What is a payment change?
Well, so new build's a little bit different because it depends on your exit strategy, right? Like if you plan on selling right away, then it's actually not as interest rate.
Hold, just to hold, to own it.
Yeah, it's not as interest rate sensitive as it would be if you were planning on, like.
But you're not selling.
Look, I mean, give the example of the math, and I'm going to use a really, I think for most it's a higher number. Maybe for most of our listeners it isn't, but like if you're making $100,000 a year, which is a very, very high income for, what does that put you, like in the top 10% or top 12% or something? The traditional way of thinking is that you should be spending maybe at most 35% of your income on a mortgage or rent or something like that. And so let's say mortgage. So that's $35,000 a year, which is just under basically $3,000 a month is what you can afford or should be affording in a home. And every time interest rates go up by 1 point, that number gets crazy.
So the question is, I guess, like, so I looked at it like, okay, like $1 million home in our area, to your point, $8,000 in mortgage payment, and it's only renting for $6,000. So like, how does this, I guess, as a single family home, it's going to be much different areas, right? I feel like you have to be much more selective these days. You used to be able to make the numbers work a lot more places. If you're a single family home investor for renters right now, is it just pencils down until you see interest rates come down, or is this something that we still see a yield on? Like, can you still make the numbers work on this?
I think it really depends on what your return strategy is. Remember, there are multiple ways to make money in real estate. You make money from, in addition to cash flow. I mean, cash flow is a big one, but you also make money from forced appreciation, natural appreciation. You make money from having your tenants pay down your loan, so loan pay down, and then you make money from tax benefits. And so these days, with high interest rates, especially interest rates higher than cap rates, so you have negative leverage, you're going to see less cash flow than you would have seen a few years ago or even a decade ago. And you need to supplement that with the benefits in other places. You need to accept you're going to have less cash flow and decide, okay, I'm going to accept the 2 or 3% average appreciation I'm going to get. I'm going to accept the 100% bonus depreciation and do a cost seg on my single family. We did cost segs on a couple dozen single families last year.
Yeah, but cost seg costs, 10,000 plus dollars, like
Not on a single family. You get it for $400. So, I mean, and then there's the loan pay down. You're getting some benefit from the loan pay down, maybe not in the first couple of years, but that'll accrue. And so, yeah, you may only be seeing 2, 3, 4% in cash flow, but when you add in all the benefits, if you're buying well, you still might see double-digit returns. They're just not going to be all in cash flow like it used to.
Do we see? I guess my fear is, do we see the possibility of, we talked about before, like single family home values kind of just remaining stagnant for even 5+ years? If that's a possibility, or I don't want to use the word likely, but a real scenario that could happen, like how much are you factoring that in? Because real estate has been a great play because, you know, historically, if you're owning these things for 10+ years, your value is going up, right? And you could take the cash flow, even if it's 3% for 10 years, that's fine if the value of your property went up 40%. So like, is it still one of those? I don't know. I guess I just feel like, yes, there's obviously some areas that still make it work. I still see some very rural middle America, some places even in Texas that are, you're getting close to that, even that 1% rule that everyone says. But other than that, I think it's like, I don't know. I'd be very wary of it.
We're seeing prices start to come down. So in our market, literally, it's like, hey, you have only a few mechanisms here, right? There's only a few ways to make this work, and we forget that we may talk about making money other ways, but if you're using the bank, the DCR is your god. So when we're looking at ability to secure loans at a 6% or a 7% interest rate compared to a 3%, for your debt coverage ratio, right? You're eliminating at where prices were, hey, you're 99% of all loans. It's not tenable. So if then you say, okay, well, what are the ways that you could do it then? You could do it without debt. But then what money wants to go into real estate, especially some different types of assets without debt? It's not that there's not, of course there is, but you've just destroyed the market down to a fraction of it, right? And you don't get the same tax benefits. You don't get on and on and on is the problem if you don't use debt in real estate. So outside that, the only other mechanism, if that's not doing, is prices have to come down to make it make sense. And this is what you're seeing in single family homes. Obviously, you have markets like where Jay's lives, where a combination of like just the trifecta, you have the high interest rates, you have the high cost, and then you also have insurance because of storms, right? That's really, really hurting because at the price level, it's just not doable. So prices are coming down because they have to, because they just not sell. We're seeing that in storage, where we're finally seeing buyers come. I haven't seen you guys a deal sell at its listing price, and I don't even know how long. And they all close, they all sell, and it's far below. We're seeing in some cases, a 20 to 30% reduction. And that's what it's taking to get assets to transact. And they will not transact without it because they can't get the funding. They can't get the banks to do it. So outside the few properties that will transact, in cash, that they're like, we'll buy, we'll hold this, and you have buyers that are willing to do it, investors, which there is, that part of the market exists. It's a fraction though. So out of 2,000 deals, you're talking about five, right? The rest of those deals, they just have to come down. And that will be forced by things like the bank. Why? Because when you have to refinance, all of a sudden, you just can't do it. Your equity is gone because you either have to put up the money to get that DCR in place, or you need to sell the property and you're going to have to take a loss on the equity. They're coming in can meet their DCR. That's the only way that it can work.
I guess the silver lining, though, that I look at it is, if you can make the deal pencil so that you are making at least some cash flow right now, then
Oh, it's a killer deal.
I do believe it
Yeah.
is the opportunity for a killer deal, because I don't the supply coming on is very muted, and the opportunity for potential interest rates coming down, opportunity
And,
for cap rates
and bonus,
coming
and
down.
don't forget the bonus depreciate. Don't forget bonus depreciation. That sounds by all means coming back. Just on the tax benefits of getting something that breaks even is a huge benefit for people.
Yeah, and you definitely don't bank on any of these things happening. Like, you kind of just have them in the back of your mind. But if you can make it pencil and cash flow under the current market conditions, then there are quite a few things that could happen that make these into screaming deals. And I would say the likelihood of at least one of these things hitting, and just making rent bumps go through the roof, just making values go through the roof with cap rate compression, was making, like, there's, with interest rates coming down so that you could potentially even refi, Like there's just a lot of opportunity.
We're getting deals though without having to plan this big exit or anything. When you look at it, because those prices are coming down and they're trying to reflect this new market, you have two things that are happening. First of all, development is gone down, and we talked about this earlier: supply demand. So all of a sudden now, development in some of these asset classes, like commercial, is crashing. So you're stopping supply for years. Development, the tail end of development is years. So what you're doing is you are like, we know demand will be higher. Demand will be higher. Why? Because supply's not coming out.
Your development, like your schedule for like how long it takes to bring something online, it's much shorter than ours. So you would see this happening a lot quicker than we would, right? Like we have to look like 18 months, even sometimes 2 years out.
I mean, to get stabilized, absolutely years. I mean, just to get it out of the ground, you're talking maybe, 1 to 2 years. But if it's not permitted, if it's not everything else, it's longer. Yeah, it's even longer. And right now, with where you try to get a bank to give you a loan, right? It's the development's falling off a cliff right now. It takes years to start that back up, not just the actual process of doing it, but the market conditions to get to a point. Then you have to actually execute. You're years. So we will be years behind, just like 2008. So we're finding sellers now that are discounting prices when markets have stabilized. And we're getting a yield on cost stabilization of some of these assets, particularly ones that were developed, of 10. We couldn't get that years ago. It's crazy. So all of a sudden, we're sitting here going, this is like some of the best buying conditions we've seen. It's not the easiest. It's really hard. We're getting seller finance deals, things, because sellers now have to come up with options. And so if you're, like you said, Kyle, the deals that we're finding today, it's not like it used to be. There's not tons, but we are not projecting any rental rate increases. We're not saying we're going to exit at a 4 cap. No, we're nothing like that. We're saying if there's an exit, it's at today's cap rate or higher. Interest rates aren't going down. And we're assuming for the first 3 years, we have 0 rent increases. And so then off that, though, we're still buying deals that today we're looking and going, we can legitimately get a 10% yield on cost. Now, to put that into perspective, I mean, this is back to like, we're talking 2016 prior type levels, and not for, all of this build out and everything going. Now, these are deals though that are like, you got to be in it, you got to be working. But we haven't found deals, period. Last 3 years, nothing.
I think that translates to like some other industries. It's tough for us because it's tough to find, like when you talk about seller financing, like it's tough for us to find any small shops. It's tough for us to find any like opportunities like that. You guys can kind of still do a little bit of the guerrilla style of bringing in deals, but that translates. We started this segment talking about single family homes. That translates to there too, right? There will be people who, anybody who, yes, we can talk about how resilient the single family housing market is, but that's a lot for people owning their own homes and living in them. If you're talking about investors who have some sort of portfolio loan that has a floating rate or has, something else going on like that is interest rate sensitive, like they could be looking to exit that quickly. And if you are willing to put in the work and pound the payment, you could find those deals still. And if you, to my point before, if you can make them pencil, the opportunity for that to turn into a screaming deal, I think is still there. And any final thoughts on this, Jay, or can we wrap this up?
No, I agree. I mean, obviously, the market is at more of a precarious situation. Wow, sorry, a little drunk right now. The market's a little bit more precarious than it was even a few months ago. I mean, we don't know where things are headed. Maybe I'm a little jaded because I live in the southwest side of Florida, and we are getting absolutely.
Yeah, you can't take Florida as meaning anything. Florida's its own little country right now.
Yeah, but it's what I live in. It's what I experience day in and day out. And so I'm probably, my perception of what's going on in real estate is probably a little bit skewed by living here. I probably think things are a little bit worse nationally than they actually are, simply because where I live, things are pretty bad right now. So I would say, be a little bit more conservative than even a few months ago, but I've been saying for years that I think we're in for several years of relatively flat real estate prices, maybe up a little bit, maybe down a little bit. I think everybody said it well. If you find a good deal that gives you a little bit of cash flow that seems like it's going to have a little bit of appreciation where you can get some tax benefits, and you have your tenants paying down your loan, now's as good a time to buy as any, because in 10 years, I think we can all agree that anything you buy today is going to be worth more than it is today.
Fair enough. Mauricio, top 10? You want to do this one, or you want me
I was
to?
gonna ask if we were gonna go to top 10. Is it gonna be a 10-hour podcast, or are we going? What's going on here? This is like almost a
No,
2-hour
I think
podcast.
we're sneaking under an hour and a half. We did a little break there in the middle when AJ had some technical difficulties.
We're at an hour and 21 right now, I believe.
Yeah, sneak it under an hour and a half. Let's do this quick.
We're at 1:44. AJ's combing his beard. He's busy. We don't have time for that stuff.
He's relaxed.
I'm
He's
dreaming
relaxed.
of my haircut we're going to do live.
Dude, I totally want to do that. I want to actually, AJ, when we do that, I want to be there with you.
I think we should all be together. Do barber shop.
Oh,
style.
even better. That the barber just goes from you to me to
exactly. Yeah. We only have to hire one barber. It'll be great.
That's awesome.
Maybe one beard guy too.
Can we get somebody
we
to dye my hair?
We just need to coordinate when we're all going to need a haircut at the same time.
We're all going to be together.
Come to me. I'll set it up. I got a good spot. I go to the same person all the time.
Okay, top 10.
Supercuts.
Yeah, sport clips. No. All right, top 10. So I'm sitting obviously in a rental on the beach right now. I don't want to say how much I spent on it because I think we spent too much, but at the same time, it got me thinking. Obviously, I don't know if you guys do this whenever you stay in something and you pay money to someone else who's obviously a real estate investor. You're like, how much money is this person really making on this property? And you start to run some numbers. And so I thought I'm just do the top 5, keep it short for Mauricio. Short-term rental markets as terms as yield on the price. Now, this is from AirDNA. I don't know if you guys have ever used AirDNA. They don't factor in all of the expenses. They're not really big on, calculating CapEx on roofs and stuff like that. But as far as the top list is concerned, I think it's still good. So I'm going to take it for the low end of the budget. So this is 100,000 to 350,000. They break it up. AJ, if you want, I can do the top 5 and the million to 5 million later. But this is just the top 5 yield on cost. So number 5 is the Finger Lakes in New York. Shout out to I know there a few people actually,
which is the best SNL skit ever. The Finger Lakes. Can I touch?
I have no idea what that is, but now I need to go look it up.
Oh, Jay, I'm going to send it to you. It's amazing.
It's right up there with Robert Goulet in Nature.
Okay. My wife grew up really close to the Finger Lakes.
So number 4 is in Indianapolis. It's actually, it's a little confusing. It was called Michigan City in Indianapolis. Or wait, is Indianapolis, is IN Indianapolis or Indiana? I always get that mixed up.
Indiana.
That's what I was just second guessing myself there. Number 3, Benton Harbor, Michigan. So a lot of vacation spots in Michigan. Actually, I had a buddy who bought a really nice place on the lake there. Awesome. Then number 2 is Broken Bow Lake, Oklahoma.
Sounds like someplace AJ would go to hunt.
Well, it already has the word lake in there, so that seems like that. And then number 1, I questioned. I guess it includes. It's not just the states, because San Juan, Puerto Rico is actually the highest yield for houses, 100,000 to 300,000. There you go. If you want to start looking at vacation rental
that
properties,
makes sense. Puerto Rico makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, you have to replace your house every 5 years. But
I literally made a post either today or yesterday about how all these new regulations on the Airbnbs, like you literally have to disclose all of the fees now. Like, right when you book, did you get all the actual numbers when you booked, or all these hidden fees that you don't until you click?
Well,
like
no, we've been coming to the same place. We've been coming to the same place, so we're like direct to the owner now at this point. But I also noticed, you know what the biggest win with that is? Concert tickets. I love it, because it used to be like if you were, or like Eagles tickets, obviously that's the one that I care about the most. It used to be like, oh, there was StubHub, Ticketmaster, Vivid Seats, TickPick, all these different ones, and they all quote these different prices, but then they have all these different fees. So you literally got to be like, oh, this price looks like it's a good deal. You got to click it, and then finally it adds $180 to a $400 ticket. Now, by law, they have to put all of the prices on. So you could literally just mark mark my words. If there isn't already, I'm sure there is, but someone's going to come out with like the same thing like those travel sites do, where it compares all the travel sites. Now someone's going to come out with the same thing with tickets, because it's like now you could just straight up compare them all because the fees are all included. So I love it. I love that.
It's so annoying.
I mean, I was getting to the point. I mean, part of it is like I was already getting to the point where like when I saw, because I do a lot of VRBO like you do, like I would look at a VRBO. If they told me it was like $500 a night, I would just assume it's $750. Like I just knew it was going to be another 50%.
Airbnb was the worst, right? Because like it wasn't even set fees across the site. Like you comparing two properties on Airbnb itself, this one would say it's 300, this one would say it's 350, but then the 350 one total would be less than the one that was 300 because the fees weren't all up front. They have cleaning fees, they have, service fees, they have all these different things. It was Airbnb was getting a little crazy.
Yeah,
So
I was actually at AJ's house like a month ago or two, and he like the fees that AJ charged, like in terms of like cleaning fees and freaking bartending fees and pool fees, it was out of control. I just want to let everybody know.
It didn't even cover the messiness.
No, it was like crazy. It was crazy.
Well, so I don't know if you got what I would. Did you get the full service turn down? Because that was definitely worth it.
We turned down the dinosaur thing, but Jake, that we did a whole turn down on the dinosaur thing. It was pretty cool. We got to witness that. It was awesome.
That's specialty.
Yeah.
Kyle, did you get the happy ending?
That was a VIP package. That was a VIP
It was
package.
the full service turn down. Jay, that was included. Mauricio, you got any plugs for us?
Dude, I changed the name of my program. I'm gonna plug the Elite Syndicator Inner Circle.
This is 3 weeks in a row.
No,
we've skipped a few weeks where you said you've changed the name.
Maybe it's the same thing. Maybe I talked about it last time. But if you consider yourself an elite syndicator, come join the Elite Syndicator Inner Circle, where we teach you and show you how to raise capital compliantly, not just bang out a PPM, but actually raise the money compliantly. If you have any interest in that, go to coachingwithmauricio.com. We will not help you out. I will help you out personally.
What if you're just a solid, well-respected syndicator and not elite? Would we still qualify?
I only work with elite syndicators.
Okay, all right. Maybe after we close our next deal, then, Jay. AJ, what do you got for us? AJ, you're crooked.
Oh, I thought it was only mine. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to go with the YouTube channel. Go check it out, everybody. Alex is working hard, doing a great job on it. So,
dude, actually, you know what? I'm sorry. Can I wait. Can I do a plug for AJ's Inner Circle? I was at his event a couple weeks ago or a month ago. Dude, the quality of people at his Inner Circle, his self-storage Inner Circle, off the chart. It made me want to go invest in self-storage and hang out with the like top level people. So if you're interested in self-storage, check out AJ Osborne. You give the link. I don't know what the link is, but AJ Osborne, just Google AJ Osborne, get into his Inner Circle. It's well worth it.
Wow, somebody wants to get hired back for an event, huh? I see what it is. Okay, Mauricio.
Yeah, he killed it. He killed it.
So that was really kind of a plug to AJ to, hey, like I think I did a great job, and I'm going to plug your program. I see what it is. Jay, we got any room left? We still yeah.
We got a little bit of room left, and I will say I do get AJ's newsletter almost every day. Very good, so I do highly recommend anybody that's looking to get into self-storage. But we have a little bit of room left in our offering. We're building 351 multifamily units outside of Dallas, Texas. I'm super pumped about this deal. This is the most excited I've been about a deal in a long, long time. Anybody that wants to partner with us as a passive investor, it's a 506C, accredited investors only. And I would love to chat with you. So reach out to me anyway. There are lots of ways to get in touch with me. But happy to jump on a Zoom call, tell you about the deal, point you in the right direction. But yeah, we've got some room left.
Past performance is no indication of future results.
Past performance is no indication of future results. Just because I have been awesome for 53 years doesn't mean I will continue to be awesome, though I like to think that there's a reasonable chance I will.
It doesn't hurt that Ashley Wilson's involved. I will say that.
Not just involved, she's leading this thing. Why do you think I'm involved? Do you think I'd be involved in something she wasn't leading?
Let's plug. Let me plug my own wife. You guys always want to jump in and plug Ashley.
We all want to plug Ashley. I don't know what to tell you. We all want to plug
Ashley.
Ashley.
She's my work wife. I can plug her at work.
Let me at least plug her first. Then I want to go first.
You get first dibs, pal. You get first dibs.
Go check out Badass Investor at Badass Investor on YouTube, on Instagram, all those different things. Much better looking than Jay. And you can check out us hanging out at Ocean City. I think she's been posting on that stuff too. Cool, good episode, guys. Glad we were able to throw it together, even though we're technical difficulties, not all together. But love hanging out with you guys. I missed you. Happy 4th. Happy birthday to
happy 4th, everyone. Happy 4th. Happy 4th.
Yeah, happy 4th, everybody.
Long live America.
Happy 1st for my Canadian folks. And then, I guess I actually finished all 3 of my drinks. So they're all gone. I should probably go hit the head. So I will see you next Thursday.
Later.
Late.
See you guys.